What's up, everyone? Welcome to Akuma's Arsenal, and today we are going to talk about my thoughts on Swiss versus Japanese versus German and versus other places as well. Let's get on with the video. First of all, I'm sorry about the light. Who cares? Let's get on with it. So, Swiss versus German versus Japanese, and I would even add Soviet to the list, right? What do I think? Like me, what do I think? Most people look at these different places of Watchmen, and China. We'll include China. So 5 countries, 5 of the main countries watches are from, and of course all these watches are probably manufactured in Indonesia. Some parts manufactured from here, right? A lot of these are just watches built in a lot of different places, and they're kept super duper on the hush hush. But let's just go with what people conventionally think these brands are, right? So let's start off with, we'll go low high. China. We'll start with China. When a watch is made in China, people instantly think made poorly, made cheaply, and not very good quality. And I think that's fairly accurate, honestly. However, honestly, that's very fairly accurate. And we'll include India. Why not include India? China is the manufacturing hub for cheap shit, and cheap watches are in that category. And they pump out a lot of fakes. I'm sure fakes are made in a lot of places, but a lot of them come from China. Chinese. That's the perception. I haven't handled very many Chinese watches besides a few fake watches, but Chinese watches, the perception is that they're made ill. However, I do know that China makes some alright chronographs, some pretty good mechanical timepieces. What else? They have I think Zeppelin is a Chinese brand. I think they're I've never handled them, but I think they're fairly alright. What else? That's the mainstream perception of China, and I have to agree with it. We'll go Russian. We'll go Russian slash. We'll go former Soviet Union and Russia, right? And by former Soviet Union, I'm talking. Am I talking Poland? See, this area is kind of weird because when you say vintage Soviet, a lot of people think Russian, but the Soviet Union was a lot of different places. That was like Belarus, that was like parts of Finland, that was Ukraine, that was a lot of different places. Depending on, it could be Poland. It really depends on what you think about the Soviet Union, how you think about it. But for the sake of this, I'm gonna include Belarus, Poland, all of the former communist. But any country behind the Iron Curtain, I'm gonna just consider it post Soviet. I'm gonna include that in a category. That's just me. Don't get mad at me. That's just how I'm gonna talk about doing this video. I know it's way more complicated than that. I like them a lot. I stumbled across some Polish quartz watches that were really interesting and cool. I showed them to Damien. I love Vostok. I think it's an amazing company. I think they're super duper cool, honestly. All kinds of vintage Vostok, Komandirsky, Amphibia, I think it's all super duper cool. You got chronographs, puzzle chronographs, you got a bunch of different stuff, right? And I think that to know and to like Russian watches, that's kind of like my category of, I guess I don't even know. This is just stupid, but what I like to think is like my little category of like people who like watches on YouTube, right? People who really like kind of like low end, kind of really interesting stuff with a really cool story behind it. Of course, made well for that time era. We like collecting collecting the SKXs of different countries in past eras. I of course want to experience a lot. I've experienced a lot of different things, but my personal tastes, that's kind of where I am, right? I love it. There's a lot of character. I think it's super duper cool. However, I think most people they don't even know about. Besides maybe Vostok and Amphibia, and Komandirsky maybe, that they're just like, what are Russian watches? What are Soviet vintage watches? You know, what are Polish watches? They don't know unless it's a Vostok Amphibia, and even then, it's kind of under the radar a little bit. Now let's go German. You know, people respect Germany, just their engineering and design. They're crazy. The Germans are crazy. Don't mess with them. I think we've learned our lesson. Germany is one of the most industrialized countries on earth. Has been for a very, very long time. Renowned for their design and precision, and the Germans are famous for what they do. And people get that, and they understand that reflects in their watchmaking. Whether you go from like the design companies like Braun, then you go to Sinn, you can Nomos, Glashütte, Junghans, all of them, A. Lange & Söhne, all of those, right? I think A. Lange & Söhne is German. If it's not, then it's not. But German watchmaking is almost on par with Swiss. I'd say so. It has a German flair to it, though. And let's go Japanese. You know, Japan, the land of freaking crazily quality made, like, mid-range timepieces. You know, Japan, Seiko, Orient, all those Citizen, they're versatile companies. You know, they've made it big in the past, like 50 years. Everyone who's probably watching this video knows someone who's owned a Japanese watch, and if you don't, wow, I don't know where you've been, but Casio, Seiko, Citizen, Orient, damn. They own low range. They own it. Unless you're going super low end like the Chinese do, they own that category. Wow. Enough said about the Japanese. You guys know about them. And their vintage stuff, I'd say it's kind of under. I think people really like vintage Seiko. However, I don't really think people are really willing to like dig under and find all the cool stuff that vintage Japanese has to offer, and that's something I will explore more. And last but not least, we have vintage Swiss. Vintage Swiss is obviously the most renowned, the most well respected. They're the mainstream boys, like Hodinkee kind of stuff, you know. Vintage Tag chronographs, vintage Rolex, vintage Omega. Not even vintage Omega. They look down on vintage Omega, I think. So there's two in this category. You got dudes like Hodinkee and you got dudes like Christian. Christian's kind of like he's kind of the oddball, honestly. he's the oddball kind of watch dealer, the kind of watch guy in that kind of vintage Swiss kind of mindset. I really like what he does. I think he has some really, really cool stuff to offer. And then Hodinkee, you know, that's like, everyone knows that is what kind of stuff they like. They like the icon. They like collecting the most iconic watches of certain time periods, and they're, I think, by far one of the more well-known watch collectors. I think it's really hard to get into. I mean, all these guys are athletes, but maybe politicians, maybe businessmen. They're collecting watches that the average man probably can't get, and to me, that's where it kind of loses its appeal. I like watches that a carpenter who was working in the Soviet Union maybe could get a Vostok Amphibia if maybe he somehow could have gotten it, right? Some soldier probably wore Vostok Amphibia for their dive training in the Soviet Union, or the vintage Seiko, some dad wore that to his kid's baseball game. That has charm to me. That has a story. That has an appealing story. Same thing with Christian stuff, right? But back then, you know, like those watches, they've shot up in price. People like me, right? As of right now, I'm not the richest guy in the world. I'm working on it, and I will be rich in the future because I'm working my ass off at it, and I'm doing everything I need to be doing. Eventually, I will be rich. However, those are the kinds of watches I still won't collect. I like collecting the stuff I like to collect, stuff that makes me happy, and unless it's a Rolex bubble back, then I don't really care about that kind of area. You know, that Hodinkee kind of watch collecting. Just my thoughts on the 5 important countries of watchmaking. I'm aware that almost forgot about India. Come on, India. You know, HMT. You got the vintage Franken watches. They kind of looked very, very similar to China in some ways, but kind of more like a well-tasted China, if that makes any sense. I don't mean any disrespect to you if you're Chinese. Your country is good at mass-producing cheap stuff. Like, if you take offense to that, then you're gonna have a bad time. I mean, China's known for a lot of other stuff. However, with manufacturing, we're watch people. Blah blah blah. Who cares? But HMT, you got the vintage Franken watches. I think HMT is a pretty cool company. From what I heard from Kaushal, is a lot of the stuff you find on eBay is just old new stock. So, hey, cool, go for it. So if I had to, I'm not even gonna rank them. I think you guys could figure out how I would rank them from my personal tastes. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the main categories of watches. You know, a little bit more of a kind of advanced kind of watch collecting topic. I keep looking at myself because I'm just trying to check like how the lighting is. Look at myself this whole video. Didn't even look at you guys. See, that's why I usually flip the camera over, because I'm always like, how's the lighting? How does this look? Blah 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 blah. And also so I can make sure I'm in shot. But here we are. Yeah, guys, let me know your thoughts on the different kind of areas of watch collecting. Let's see if we can get a kind of advanced conversation going in the background of all the other stuff I do on YouTube. Just thanks, dudes, maybe like 1 or 2 girls who watch these videos, and peace and Akuma.